All right, so I am harvesting honey. You can see here I had a big spill. I got distracted. Tastes good though. So I'm harvesting out of the flow frames on the flow hive. And I've got a few jars here that I've been filling. I made a terrible mess because this is my first time and I don't really know what I'm doing. But the advantage is the bees will clean it all up and take care of it, and it really doesn't end up being a big deal. So I've harvested most of this so far. I have one more frame left to go. It's one of the lighter ones. Lighter as in like amount of honey. But you can see here, this frame system is pretty cool, and the bees don't get too involved, not compared to normal honey harvesting. So there are bees in my honey because I made a mess and I attracted them. But that's my fault, not their fault. I'm gonna try to save some of them, or as many of them as I can. But you can see right here, this is a series of honeycomb frames made of plastic that they kind of align like this inside, and the bees bridge this little gap with wax and fill the whole thing in with honey. And then there's a lever that you stick in the hole, and it breaks the wax so that the honey drains out through this special setup. And then when you shift it back, it defers the honey back to the hive. Like you can see here, it's going to drain down into the hive, and they'll take it back. And the bees are very clean. They make quick work of anything. You can see right here, obviously I spilled a bunch. I wasn't watching and I overflowed the jar because I'm a rookie, and the bees are already cleaning it back up. So I'm just gonna cover this back up, even though this is a big mess. I'm gonna cover it back up so that less bees get inside, and then hopefully I can harvest the last frame that I have and get a good bit of honey. Now I have some honey that I harvested from the other hive as well, which is right here, and those are in traditional frames. So I just kind of took them over there and put them in the John Deere Gator so that they'd be away. I let the bees mostly fly away, and then I shook the rest off. So I'm gonna do something with that, the couple of frames that I removed. But I'm also doing an experiment, which is this hive here is weaker. I'm gonna leave them most of the honey that they made, and then see how that works versus this hive, which I have to remove all of the honey from because these plastic cells can't overwinter on top of the hive. You wouldn't want the queen getting up in there and making a mess come springtime. And so I'm gonna remove that, and I'm gonna feed all of these bees to try to replace what I've taken from them, because obviously the honey is how they, store food for the winter, and I'm taking it from them, so they need to be able to replenish their stores. And I'm gonna do that with just basic sugar water, which is standard practice among beekeepers. You mix it real thick in the fall. It's like 2 times the sugar to 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. So it's basically almost like honey when you give it to them, which means it doesn't take them as long to dry it. So they can put it away for winter and it won't go bad. At least that's the idea. So we'll come back when something else is happening. All right, so I made a mess, which means the bees are angry and they're going nuts because they realize that I'm stealing all their honey, which is sort of not how this is supposed to go. So I'm done. I only have 1 frame left to go, and I'm just gonna save it for tomorrow and let these bees just calm down. They're not happy with me. And yeah. All right, so without getting stung a million more times. Okay, there's that. Here's this, get rid of that, because it didn't catch hardly anything. And let's see, pull the tube off, plug the hole, I'll just let that drain out on the rock for them. They can have it. Let's see. There's my top plug. I lost that. Got some spares though, so. Cap that hole. Something. Come on. They're getting really upset with me. They don't like me right now. I didn't get much in that jar. It pretty much all just spilled. It all just got robbed. So I'm gonna call it quits and get out of here because this is horrible. And let them just calm the hell down because they don't like this. So here's the aftermath of the front. You can see I put a bunch of honey down because there were tons of bees just drowning in it, and you know, they don't have that many numbers now at this time of year. They're not going to replace that fast, so I wanted to save them. So I scooped them out of the jars, and this is mostly bees just coming to collect the honey because they're very defensive. And you can see right here, I mean, there's just honey all over it because it just drips, and so they're just going nuts trying to collect it. In this hive here, I took some frames from as well. And then in the back here, I'm not even going to try to cover it because it's just too much. I spilled. That's the lesson. Don't spill, because when you spill, you attract bees. Who would have thought? Honey attracts bees. So here's a clip of what I got so far. I mean, that jar is full. These ones are partials. Some of the bees, regrettably, kamikazed in. So that was from hive number 1. I could have had more. I spilled a lot. I took another whole jar from this a few days ago just to try it out, and I didn't have the camera. Here, we've got some nice frames of capped honey. This is from hive number 2. I'm not going to take every last drop of honey that they have. I'm experimenting. I'm going to take all the honey from the honey supers on hive number 1. I'm going to leave them some honey in hive number 2 because I think hive number 1 is stronger. See here, some more honey. It just took them so much effort to make the honeycomb. It took forever, so obviously I got some work to do as far as helping them be more productive next year, but that's part of the learning, I guess. So I don't know, it's a good amount of honey, and this I think will yield a surprising amount. So it's going to be difficult to extract it without damaging the honeycomb, but I don't know. I got to do a little more learning on how I'm going to do it, but for now this is pretty safe. And you know, some of these frames here, it's not capped, so that honey was not up to the bees' standards yet. It wasn't done. And then you know, this capped is all really nice. That's perfect honey. And look at that. And that's heavy too. That's surprisingly heavy. I would say that might weigh, I don't know, 5 or 6 pounds, which, you know, seems bigger than you'd think. Boy, you can even hear bees, and you know, I got bees in the screen porch here. Not super bees, but you know, regular bees. Be happy. And it attracted a lot of attention from the chickens too, because they heard me talking to the camera, and they're trained to come to my voice. So look at them. You can see the swarm going on out there. This is the time of year when bees are defensive, and I really gave them something to fight about. So we'll pick up maybe tomorrow. I'll do a little more harvesting, finish off once they're calmed down and they've cleaned up all of my mess. But look at the chicken chasing a moth. I've never seen the chickens go after the bees. Maybe they're smart enough to not. Okay, so it's been a couple days. The bees have cleaned up the mess that I made when I overflowed the honey harvest. So this should be the last frame of honey left to harvest. So I'm just gonna kind of show how it works with the flow hive here. Let's see if you can see the top there. Yeah, so this is a key. It's just a piece of flat bar, and it goes in there, and there's a sort of a rudimentary valve in there. And then I need this real quick. So the bees will smell the honey when I put this tube in, so you kind of got to work quickly to reduce the number of them that end up in there. Let's see. So just gently pry this out because they kind of put a little layer of goo there to hold it in. And then there's a lip you put in. Oh, look, she smelled it. They know what's going on. Okay, and then before I fire it up, I'm gonna put this piece of plastic on to try to stop them. So I'm expecting this honey to be kind of runny. It's an outer frame, which means they probably didn't get to it until later. So it's probably not as cured as some of the other honey that I have. So here we go. Key goes in, and they have a wax layer built up in between the frames. So you kind of just twist, it breaks the wax, and the honey should come out. So you're gonna see the bees probably will know something's going on because I'm making noise and they can feel it. And yeah, so this frame is lighter than the other ones for sure. And that's the whole thing. And in a second here, should start seeing some honey come out. There it goes. And if I'm clever enough, the bees won't know I'm taking it until it's too late. Let's see if you can see that. So honey's going down into the jar. This is a flow hive, which is like the fancy new style hive. And this is the advantage of it. You don't need any equipment to harvest the honey. Where traditional frames, you know, they come out in that rectangle. And there's several ways you can harvest the honey, but the only way you can harvest it that I've seen that doesn't involve destroying the whole frame by like scraping the wax is to put it in a centrifuge and to spin it. So I think I might, there's ways you can make them really simply out of like a small bucket and then some either wood or PVC and use a drill and you can spin it. I might make one of those to do that. Yeah. Because you don't want to wreck all of the honeycomb that the bees built. It took months for them to do it. So if you can save it for next year, you know, you're ahead a lot. Instead of spending all that effort making wax, they can use the same amount of time to make honey. As you can see here, we're chugging right along. We're harvesting some honey. That jar's getting full. So obviously the bees know something's going on, but you know, they are only bees after all, so it takes them a minute to find what's happening, and by then hopefully it's too late. But fear not, I'm not letting them starve. I have a feeding operation going at the same time. So these two pots here, you can see, so that one's been out for about a day and a half, and it's full of sugar. I mixed like 30 pounds of sugar into that pot. Basically as much sugar with the least amount of water that I could get. And then this pot I just put up this morning, there's probably another 30 pounds of sugar in that. It was like a third full of water, and then the rest is sugar, and you just mix it until you can't mix anymore. And that way the bees can harvest it as sugar dense as possible, so they put less effort into fanning the flames. Fanning the honey. You can see here the honeycomb has split. See how it's no longer nice rectangles, there's like gaps in between, and the honey is draining down that labyrinth and then out the trough and into the jar, and that is safe to eat. It isn't fully cured, they didn't cap it, so this honey is not going to last 10,000 years like the stuff you hear about in the pyramids. Some of my other honey is that way, but this is not, just because I'm harvesting it late and you know, they didn't finish. But typically the outer frames get finished last, and this was a year one hive for me, so their population was low, and I don't really know what I'm doing. All that means less honey. But yeah, you can see in relation to last time I harvested, the bees have cleaned up every last drop. I mean, they just got to work, and that swarm was just them cleaning up their mess, so my mess really. So what I've just done now is I opened up all of the frames, everything. So if the bees have harvested any of my sugar mixture or anything else, it's all going to drain down into the bottom of the hive. This will give them a day to clean up the mess, and tomorrow I'm going to remove this entire box from the hive. And then they should be able to basically do all the cleaning work for me. I'll put it in the chest freezer in case there's any mites or, you know, there's pests that inhabit honeybee hives. They eat wax, they eat honey, so if there's any of those larvae in there, I want to make sure that they die in the deep freeze. And then I'm just going to store it indoors in a box until next spring. You can see there, we're harvesting pretty nicely, and you know, also simultaneously feeding them. So hopefully they can ride through the winter with enough food stores. I'm going to keep feeding them just until they don't want any more, and because I do want them to survive. So learning process, but we'll see how it goes.